A very good evening to you and a warm welcome to your favorite mixed bag award-winning program, Energy 101, the only exclusive energy program on radio in Ghana today. My name is Emmanuel Aboagye-Wiafe and I'm your regular host for the show. It's a one-stop show which brings to you incisive information on energy news and interviews. It comes your way every Monday evening at 7 p.m, streaming live also on Asaase Radio 99.5. Now, Energy 101 is proudly sponsored by Bui Power Authority. Now, as the global advocacy for energy transition persists, Bui Power Authority, BPA, has been mandated to lead Ghana's renewable energy push through execution of state renewable projects, undertaking its own energy initiatives and promoting clean energy alternatives in the country. Join us in empowering sustainable development. Bui Power Authority, your renewable energy leaders. The show is also brought to you kind courtesy Goil, Good Energy. Goil, yeah. Now tonight on Energy 101, Ghana has surmounted phase 1 of its International Atomic Energy Agency's infrastructure review, which is a necessary prerequisite for the achievement of its nuclear power project. What is next, and when should we expect a final takeoff of the project? These and others as we take a comprehensive look. Thank you so much for making time tonight with me on Energy 101. Let's do some tidbits in the world of energy first. Now, from now on, there's going to be no power supply interruptions, and so investors can be assured of reliable electricity supply for their businesses. This was disclosed in London by the Finance Minister, Dr. Mohammed Amin Adam, at the UK-Ghana Business Forum organized by the AM Group in partnership with the Ministry of Finance, the GIPC, Ghana Free Zones Authority, and the UK-Ghana Chamber of Commerce. He said the government has closed the financial negotiations with independent power producers, which has lasted for over 5 years now.
Another significant development is on the IPP side. I know some of my colleagues in Parliament are very interested in this matter. Jaja, we've been debating a lot about the negotiations that have lasted for about 6 years. I'm happy to report that last week I closed the negotiations on the IPPs. We've closed it. We have restructured the arrears of the independent power producers in Ghana, particularly the 4 major independent power producers in Ghana. That has brought us some significant haircut or discount, and that now allows us to spread the balance over 5 years or above. And so I can assure you, investors, that the problem that is facing Ghana's energy sector, we are about having control over it. ECG MD is here, and he will confirm that we will stop interruptions in power supply in order to provide reliable power so that industry can thrive, so we can support the growth efforts of our economy.
There's some good news there by the Finance Minister, Dr. Mohammed Amin Adam. Now moving on, the Center for Extractives and Development Africa, Xtra, has identified some challenges limiting the scope of development authorities. These include funding constraints, the lack of involvement of metropolitan, municipal and district assemblies in projects allocated under annual budget funding amount projects, as well as limited oversight. Now, this were contained on the impact assessment of ABFA utilization by development authorities report published by the Center. The Executive Director for Xtra, Samuel Osei-Bekwin, said despite the impact of the projects on beneficiary communities, it was revealed that construction works on some projects have been halted, while other completed projects are underutilized.
Because there have been projects that, for instance, one in the OT region, where the market store have been developed, but nobody is using it. And in our interviews with the community and assessment showed that the community did not select that project as part of what they really wanted, or the location of the project was not cited in where they wanted. And so we noticed that the needs assessment may have been probably politicized, or the project may have been built as a visible project to advance whether a member of parliament or whatever their political career. And so that hasn't had any impact at all on poverty reduction or had any impact on inequality reduction or even persons with disability and gender. However, there have been multiple projects, if you look across the development authorities, that have also been completed and is generating adequate returns. We have dams that were built in the north, and it was confirmed that during the dry season we have the communities using these dams and to continue to produce the agricultural produce for sale. We also noticed educational facilities, which is school classroom blocks, that have been used. And also we have noticed that there is a problem with consultation between the development authorities and district assemblies. And we noticed a turf war between them. The development authorities and the district assemblies do not really get along at all, and we believe that should be improved. We've also noticed that there are some projects that they have been selected and it has been delivered. However, ancillary facilities that are expected to ensure the project are operationalized and generate the optimum returns are not. Example was in the Middle Belt, where they built a very nice surgical center, but there was no surgical tools to operationalize the surgical center. So when you go there, the surgical center has been commissioned, but there are no tools, so nobody is using it. And so in that way, when we assess the impact on the community, it hasn't generated any significant impact at all.
Now, on the way forward, Xtra recommended a reduction in bureaucratic hurdles to enhance engagement with the private sector partners, leveraging additional resources and expertise for development projects.
If government could come down to ensure that these issues we've identified in the report are addressed, we believe that it will help to ensure maximum returns or optimum returns from our petroleum revenue. The last bit I'll add is the fact that we had recommended, if where particularly like the market stores that have been built, where they have not been completed or when they are going to build, they should probably provide opportunities for public-private partnership between the development authorities and private sector. Those who could build market, development authorities could invest in that as well as a minority shareholder, and then continue to monitor this market. And once the market is built, maybe a BOT procedure whereby it will revert back to the development authority.
You heard Executive Director for the Center for Extractives and Development Africa, Xtra, Sami Bequin. Now, the Minister of Energy, Dr. Matthew Opoku-Prempeh, has again stated that the recent power outages experienced in parts of the country were not as a result of load shedding by the ECG. Recently, some parts of the country have been experiencing interruptions in power supply. This prompted citizens to express their dissatisfaction with the Electricity Company of Ghana. Answering questions on the floor of Parliament, Dr. Matthew Opoku-Prempeh highlighted some reasons for the erratic power supply and reassured the public of putting in place measures to fix the recent power supply crisis across the country.
No, ECG is not undertaking load shedding as at the time the question was asked. So, Speaker, consumers were experiencing outages due to a number of factors. That included localized outages due to overload on lines and transformers. So, Speaker, there are certain areas in this country that all of a sudden the number of people, residents, or the businesses that have accumulated, especially I can give an example of parts of East Lagos, which was a purely residential area, now has become one of the major business districts, increasing power consumption, thereby hampering the existing lines there. So the transformers and the lines have to be updated. Outages to upgrade the capacity of overloaded lines and transformers. SEMPA, Speaker, at the time the questioner put the question, SEMPA had an emergency valve leak, which meant a complete shutdown, losing immediately 340 megawatts. That also contributed. And then, last but not the least, plant maintenance on Amandi power plant was also ongoing at the same time. The emergency outages, sometimes also requested by a grid company, had contributed. So there was a myriad of factors that unfortunately had happened that were causing power outages in different parts at different times. So the reason why ECG went further to say that they were not load shedding, because most of those instances were not planned, and so they couldn't have come out with a program to say that they were load shedding.
You heard Energy Minister Dr. Matthew Opoku-Prempeh. Now, leading global bank Citi is predicting oil prices drop to the $60 range by 2025 as inventories build following a tight market this summer. This signals a bearish outlook despite current robust demand and higher prices. Oil is said to have recouped the losses from early June when the OPEC Plus group's indication that it could begin returning some supply to the market in the fourth quarter sent bearish signals across the market. Now, early on Friday, the international benchmark Brent crude traded above $85 per barrel, while the U.S. benchmark WTI, or West Texas Intermediary, was above $82 a barrel as signs of tightening physical markets started to emerge. The market expects solid summer demand in the third quarter, but fears that the quarterly consumption growth will start waning in the fourth quarter, pressuring oil prices downwards. International energy consultant Dr. Yusuf Sulemana has been assessing the impact on African petroleum economies should this prediction become a reality.
Assuming the prediction is to come to pass, and maybe within the year, middle of next year, oil prices should drop to, let's say, 60 barrels. I would say that it's a mixed one, but of course, when oil prices are dropping or when the commodity prices are dropping, I see that as having far more positive impact on the overall economy than when oil prices are rising. Because when oil prices are rising, remember, we are not those kind of large producers of a sort where we can boast of so much revenue we're going to earn from this export. Yes, indeed, we do have revenue we earn from export that supports our key projects. But on the balance of proportionality, in terms of which one will have much impact on the market, I believe relatively moderate oil prices will have much more positive impact on our economy than relatively high oil prices. So yes, it will have positive impact. Albeit we will lose some amount of money from oil export, but at least overall economy in terms of how we can manage inflationary figures and the fact that we are still heavily dependent on importation of this finished product, I think lower oil prices should have positive impact overall. But how can we take advantage of that? You notice that even though oil prices drop most of the time, but consumers struggle to take advantage of that because I believe the right policies have not been put in place to be able to create the right environment for consumer to benefit. I think we need to be able to, like I always mention, we need to be able to have a workable plan to be able to cascade benefits when required. When oil prices are going up, the benefits, we should be able to have a way of cushioning the downstream. And when the oil prices are coming down also, the regulator to ensure that the market is fair enough to let it reflect within the market. And so if that should happen and we are able to balance, match up our upstream and downstream to let it support each other, I think we'll be in an excellent position when the oil prices take the bearish turn and when the oil prices take the bullish turn.
Here, an incisive analysis there by Dr. Yusuf Sulemana, who is an international energy consultant. Let's stay within the downstream sector now. The Petroleum Hub Development Corporation has signed a $12 billion agreement with TCP UIC Consortium of China for the takeoff of Phase 1 of the Petroleum Hub project. The landmark integrated petroleum and petrochemical project is the first of its kind in Africa. It's worth $60 billion and is expected to revolutionize Ghana's energy sector and boost the economy. In an address at the signing ceremony, the Energy Minister, Dr. Matthew Poku-Prempeh, assured Ghana will continue to exploit its petroleum resources sustainably in line with climate change concerns.
It's an integrated project that we are looking at petroleum product storage tanks. That is referred to downstream petroleum supplies as far as petrol, diesel, and fuel. We're going to have storage hub in Ghana. And then gas pipelines to supply power plants, electricity generation is also part of the program. And then we have 3 refineries, and these are not small refineries. If you think of an oil refinery as, say, 100,000 barrels per swing day refinery, this one is 300,000 barrels per swing day. 3 of them. So this proposal tells you that the NPP government and the president is trying to say we have oil which we produce from offshore. You pipe into your refineries right at the shore and refine it into petroleum products. And installed and the gas pipeline for power generation. That is the impact this project is going to have.
We sincerely apologize for the wrong insert there. That was certainly not Dr. Matu Poku Prempeh's voice, but the Minister for Public Sector Reforms, Joseph Kujo, who was outlining the various steps within the petroleum hub development. He said the hub will, among others, accommodate 3 state-of-the-art refineries capable of together churning out 900,000 barrels of fuel per day, and also additional projects will have storage tanks and capacity storing 3 million cubic meters for effective distribution of petroleum products. Now, the Minister of the Public Sector Development also said the signing of the initial agreement will attract other investors into the space. He assured of more than available market for petroleum products to be produced in Ghana when the project is commissioned.
The first legal agreement is what we witnessed. So it is like you have an anchor tenant whom you have signed an agreement with to come and develop. Once they hit the ground and start development, the other investors will come in with their money. But the anchor tenant own agreement signed today, which is the first phase, comprises healthcare facilities, schools, estates. You know, there's a greenfield project. So investors coming into that space would have to come and meet some conditions that are conducive for foreign investments.
Why 3 refineries, especially when we have, just on a backyard, Dangote with a 1,000 barrel per day stream? Why 3?
Our analysis indicating in West Africa that can absorb what we're going to produce here. And then the developers of the refineries, they themselves have their own global markets. These are not investors that are just in the field of investments of this scale. So they have their own global market. So our market is so small to absorb whatever is. This is a global, we call this a hub. A hub project is like you are not only looking at a local market.
And that was the Minister for Public Sector Reforms, Joseph Kujo. Now, Africa's richest man, Aliko Dangote, says he perceived a pushback at his $20 billion refinery before construction even started. In an interview at the Afri-Exim Bank annual meetings and Afro-Caribbean Trade and Investment Forum, which was held in Nassau, the Bahamas, last week, Mr. Dangote revealed that both local and foreign mafia that existed in the petroleum industry tried several times to sabotage his refinery from coming to life. However, he said he believes with his resilience in business, the resistance was only temporary.
You expect them to fight through non-supply of crude, non-purchase of the product, but I think it's all temporary. We'll get there.
Did you price in the fighting back? Did you think that was going to happen?
But I didn't price. Well, I knew that there would be a fight, but I didn't know that the mafia in oil, they are stronger than mafia in drugs. It's a fact.
Did you know the mafia in oil existed before you got into this?
I know that, yes, they existed, but not as strong as the way that I've faced them. They're very strong.
Is this a global mafia? Is it
both?
Is it local mafia?
There's a local one, there's a global one, so it's all mixed up. It's all mixed up.
It's a mix, and then did they try and sabotage you in any
They tried all sorts. But like what I told you in our interview, I told you that, I'm a person that I've been fighting all my life. So I think it's part of my life to fight.
Very interesting comments there, local and foreign mafia in the oil and gas sector. Very, very interesting indeed. Now, Mr. Dangote said he has so far repaid over half of the $5.5 billion borrowed on his company's own balance sheet from some financial institutions. Mr. Dangote said efforts to raise credit through international financing would have been shut down if he had adopted the project's financing module. Let's hear.
Well, when you look at it, when we're building the refinery, first of all, we knew that, yes, if we had gone with the idea of doing a project financing, the international banks would have actually shut it down in the sense that they might have asked me for my great-grandmother's certificate of birth, which I don't think I will be able to find it anywhere. So what we did was to go in terms of borrowing the money based on our own balance sheet, and borrowing based on our own balance sheet. You know, at that time, Naira was very strong, everything was strong, and that is how we went through. So we got the money, we borrowed the money based on our own balance sheet. We borrowed total about $5.5 billion, but you know, we paid also a lot of interest as we go along because the project was delayed because of lack of land. You know, also the sand filling, you know, it took a long time, almost 6 years or so, we didn't do anything. So it was actually, 5 years. It was actually in 2018 we started. We have borrowed that much. We have actually, of course, paid interest and some principal, about 2.4. So we had, yes, we've done very well. We now have only about 2.7 billion left to be paid. So we've done very well.
Africa's richest man, Aliko Dangote. Now, Offshore Africa magazine, with the endorsement of Ghana's Ministry of Energy and the Society of Petroleum Engineers, is hosting its annual The Africa Energy Summit series in Accra. Under the theme, Africa and the New World Oil and Gas Order, the event will feature political leaders, expert speakers, business leaders, and other key stakeholders in Africa and beyond, who will be focusing on the exploitation of the continent's hydrocarbons at a time of uncertainty. The editor of Offshore Africa, one of the continent's largest and most trusted energy publications, Gilbert Da Costa, joins me on the phone to tell us more about this year's event. Gilbert, what is special about this particular Africa Energy Summit?
Good evening, Emmanuel, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to your listeners. Well, essentially, we are ready for the event on Thursday, and we are anticipating that we're going to have some of the first industry speakers to address some of the critical issues that the industry is facing at this point in time. So I'm happy to inform you that we are quite ready. We are ready to go.
Now, why the theme Africa and the New World Oil and Gas Order?
Well, it's simply because the global community seems to have taken a particular that we should not utilize the hydrocarbons we have in Africa. And the position a lot of people are taking in Africa is that Africa finds itself in a very peculiar situation. We are not the people who have contributed to the global warming crisis that the world is facing. And so it's not tenable to say that we shouldn't exploit our oil and gas resources. So we are going to try to see how the global community can accommodate Africa within the context of the challenges and the possibilities and the potential that we have with the continent.
And so when is this year's event coming on, and who are some of the speakers that are coming?
Yeah, I mean, the event is scheduled for Thursday at Alisa Hotel, and we have Minister of Energy of Ghana, Honorable Martin Kemper, who opened the session. We also have the CEO of Petroleum Commission, Egbert Flavio. We have the Mr. Joe Mensah from, Joe Mensah, as well as people from
Is it Joe Mensah from Cosmos Energy?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Mr. Joe Mensah from Cosmos Energy.
Okay.
We also have participants from outside Ghana, particularly from Nigeria. And we have Dr. Wisdom Enan, who is a well-known consultant in oil and gas, as well as the one of a company called So One, Nigeria. And they are into codes, pipes, and things like that.
Right. Definitely, Energy 101 will be there live to cover some of the speakers. Thank you so much. Gilbert Da Costa is the editor for Offshore Africa. We're so live on Energy 101, and let's move on to our main story now. Nuclear energy is considered the cleanest and most reliable energy source. Nuclear is noted for its protection for air quality by producing massive amounts of carbon-free electricity, especially in an era where countries are encouraged carbon footprints and drift towards net zero. Now, while nuclear energy is said to be powering over 70% of France's energy supply, it provides communities in 28 states in the USA. There's no gainsay that nuclear is Ghana's best bet for enhanced energy security and, of course, will be the reliable base load for the country's industrialization. Thank God, President Akufo-Addo declared Ghana's vision of developing its nuclear energy to account for 30% of the country's energy mix by the year 2070. This was when he delivered the 2024 State of the Nation address to Parliament. This, according to the President, would ensure the provision of clean and affordable electricity to drive the country's industrialization agenda and also position Ghana as a net power exporter in the ECOWAS region through the West African Power Pool. Now, since then, Ghana has surmounted phase 1 of the International Atomic Energy Agency's infrastructure review, which is, of course, a necessary prerequisite for the achievement of nuclear power projects. So where are we now as a nation, and when it comes to the country's nuclear power projects, what have we done so far? Joining me for the discussion tonight via Zoom is a Deputy Director in charge of Nuclear and Alternative Power at the Ministry of Energy, Dr. Robert Mauko Subaji. Doc, good evening. Hello, Dr. Subaji. Well, I believe he will join momentarily, but I'm also joined via Zoom by a friend of mine based in France. He's a civil nuclear engineer who has worked on a variety of energy-related infrastructure projects around the world, ranging from nuclear power, LNG, and also renewable technologies. He's in the person of Hugo Kruger. Hugo, good evening and welcome.
Emmanuel, thank you for having me on the show.
It's really a great pleasure having you on board now. How is France?
Oh, it's quite nice over here. It's nice and summer, but I don't think you guys have a problem of winter in Ghana. Not much of it.
No, not at
all.
Extended
this time.
Not at all. It's really, really hot here in Ghana. Even though we're supposed to be in our rainy season. From May, June, July is the rainy season in Ghana. But still having some hot temperatures. Well, so good to have you. Doc, Dr. Subaji, are you there?
Yes. Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Oh, good. I can hear you loud and clear now, Doc.
All right.
How are you doing?
I'm good.
Okay. Doctor, so where are we now? Where are we now when we talk about Ghana's nuclear energy projects?
Okay. I greet your listeners and viewers. With the Ghana Nuclear Power Program, it is the project is contained in the program.
Okay.
And our program is outlined together with the milestones of the International Atomic Energy Agency. And we have completed phase 1, which we did in 2019, where we have done all the plans which are necessary to go into the implementation phase. And now we are in phase 2, which is in the implementation phase.
Doc, so before you continue, what were some of the issues that came up under phase 1 and what did we surmount?
Okay, so under phase 1, it has to do with public sensitization. There are 19 infrastructure issues that we had to address in terms of security, human resource, preparedness, and also how to make sure that our regulatory regimes are set in place and make sure that safety and security, we have to make all plans to make sure that we do them. So we did all this. We addressed all these 19 infrastructure issues, and then we invited the International Atomic Energy Agency to review them. And then where there were gaps, they were able to identify, they showed us where there were gaps. We addressed those gaps, and where we had performed very well, such as the management system, they tap our back and said, we have done very well. So we had to address those gaps and make sure that especially communication on nuclear power reportage, the human resource, what are the plans that we have outlined. So establishing the School of Nuclear and Allied Science, and also having international collaborations with vendor countries, where all some of the activities we did to make sure that we are sure that there's going to be adequate human resource for the program that we're developing. among others. And as I said, there were 19 issues, the commissioning plans, and all of them have to make sure that, but these are plans which you have to make sure that you have outlined and plans that you foresee that will be required in the program. Then in phase 2, you are now coming to implement the plans. So as we were in phase 2, we have established the Nuclear Regulatory Authority to make sure that they guide, the promoter organizations such as the Ministry of Energy, the Ghana Atomic Energy, Nuclear Power Ghana, on the step-by-step ways on how we are going to safely introduce nuclear power into the national grid.
But Doc, if we have the IAEA monitoring us, why would we necessarily have to have another regulatory authority?
The IAEA is an international advisory body. They don't enforce you, or they don't, but they guide you. They give you guidelines. Every country is responsible for its own safety and security of its infrastructure. But the IAEA is filled with a lot of experts that can guide you as a nation to be able to design your own safety and security in line with international best practices. And based on the experience of other countries, they're able to help you to collaborate with existing vendor countries so that you don't have to reinvent the wheel, but then you have to make sure that the laws you are promulgating are in line with your constitution, and they don't violate any of your constitution, but neither do they also violate international laws.
So we are implementing now in phase 2. What are we doing now in phase 2?
In phase 2, as we've established the Nuclear Regulatory Authority, we've also established the owner-operator organization, that is Nuclear Power Ghana, who is where Bui Power, VRA, and the Ghana Atomic Energy are the main shareholders. Running the Nuclear Power Ghana company. Then in phase 2, we are to identify the vendor country. Once we identify and we are able to agree and sign the contract, then we move into phase 3. So in phase 2, we issued a request for information, because for an experienced country, normally you issue, let me say, a bid, and then every country apply for the bid, and then you build a project. But our own is a program leading to a project. So we are not issuing the bid, but we request for information, and then we tell you what we expect from you. And then we move together. So we did that early, the request for information. And after the request for information, we had about 15 vendor companies and countries interested in Ghana's nuclear power program. And then we went further to reduce it to about 5 countries.
So 15
and then
initially.
Requested for further information.
So 15 initially, and reduced to 5.
And now we are waiting by the end of the year. Earlier, sooner than later, we will announce the vendor main company or country.
Right. So I'll come back to you for details on that vendor aspect. But let me go to Hugo. Now, Hugo, you are an international monitor of nuclear energy. You've actually worked on some nuclear projects, and I believe you've been monitoring Ghana's situation as well as other African countries pursuing energy. Now, are we doing the right thing, and what have you picked up?
So when you just say monitoring, just want to clarify, I don't have a formal relationship, but I've studied the situation sort of from a bird's eye view before the doctor says this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. But yes, my experience includes designing, I worked on Hinkley Point, which is in the UK design. I worked on Xtra, which is the fusion reactor in the south of France. And I am actually from South Africa, so I am from the African continent, although I live in France at the moment. So my heart is still there, which is why I'm quite passionate about this debate. When you look at nuclear power, there's one key lesson across countries what makes them succeed or not, and that is committed political leadership. If you don't have a political class that buys into it, that says we have a long-term vision to establish nuclear, say in Ghana or South Africa, the project dies very quickly. So what the doctor explained over here are normal stumbling blocks that any country comes down to. A country decides one day they want to procure nuclear, they realize, we need a regulatory authority. We need to put these things in place. So by following the IAEA protocols, or guidelines, and remember they're guidelines, the IAEA does not regulate. Regulations are country responsibility. There's ultimately Ghanaians that take responsibility. Now, there's no law saying Ghanaians have to follow those guidelines, but they are based on best practices and the experience of other countries. And this is actually one of the a few places of international law that makes very good sense. Okay, how do you treat your waste? How do you plan your facility? All of those guidelines. What regulatory authority you have? How do you declinate responsibility? Some countries like Russia, for example, Rosatom does regulation, and other countries that do regulatory separation. Ghana will have to answer all those questions for themselves. What is the best one? And then comes the point of vendor identification. Now, vendor identification generally comes with the way South Africa did it. They send out an RFI, which is request for information. All the vendors respond with their products. They also sign cooperative agreements between the countries. And then you go for what's called an RFQ, request for quotation. You start identifying the vendor. You make sure you have the money to take on the debt, because it's a debt product, and etc. The process unrolls from that. So what Ghana is doing here is following a very rational process. Many countries have been on this path. They're obviously not all on the same path. So on the African continent, it's only Egypt and South Africa that is currently at a point where they have power plants. Egypt is one of the construction. South Africa has operated one since the 1980s, and Kenya is recently looking into it. So I'm glad to see Ghana is looking into this, because I look today at Ghana's energy consumption. It's 1/10 the consumption per person of France, and about something like 8 the consumption of South Africa. So Ghanaians need a lot more energy, and nuclear provides the dispatchable energy that is necessary for industrialization. So it makes complete sense. And I'm also glad that Ghana is not going all guns blazing nuclear, because if you take on too much debt, you'll be bankrupt. So if you go it slowly, go at a pace that you can afford, that makes complete sense to me.
So Hugo, you've been highlighting, political commitment, and I also know that finance is another critical issue. Out of these two, which one would you consider the paramount consideration?
The political commitment and the finance goes along, because if a country commits to it, it will make sure that its budget is in order to make sure it can afford it. So Ghana has a relative high debt to GDP, but the nuclear interest loans is usually low interest loans, sometimes financed either through national banks if it's Russian, or export credit agencies if it's French or the United States. And sometimes those deals come with very favorable conditions for developing countries. So it's not debt that's going to bankrupt the country. But, I'm not the advisor to the Ghanaian Minister of Energy. They should have done these calculations, and hopefully they did, to make sure that they can afford it.
I believe definitely they have taken that into consideration and are following that path. Now, I'll come to you again, and I want your input into what France, because you are French, you're based in France. So what is your government of how is France helping Ghana's situation? Because I know France is one of the bidders of Ghana's nuclear project. Now, but let me go to Dr. Aboagye first. Doc.
Yeah, I'm here.
All right. So let's talk about the vendors. So you said 15 vendors were initially selected, and then 5 were taken out of the 15. Which are these 5 countries, and where are they now?
Okay, so currently we have France, we have South Korea, we have China, we have Russia, and we are the United States.
Okay.
So these are the 5 countries where the vendors that you have narrowed in, that is where they're coming from.
RFI that you sent to these countries, what were you especially expecting them to to produce, the information that you expected from them, these 5 countries?
Okay, so the RFFI, which we sent to these 5 countries, we were looking at details of the technology, the financing mechanism, and also what other relationship which is supposed to develop to make sure our program become resilient in terms of human resource capacity building and other things in terms of relationship between their vendor, their regulator, and our regulator. So, as I said, it's not solely a project, but it is a program with a project. So we are looking for the vendor, what kind of programs associated with the project and also including finance. But finance has one of the weights, the highest weight of which you are choosing a vendor. And the mechanism of the financing was also very, very key. Whether it's going to be an EPC plus finance, whether it's going to be a BOOT, whether it's going to be a BOO, all these will also have to play in.
Okay, so now you said we have selected a site already, right? Have we selected a site?
Yeah, we have preferred sites and backup sites.
Okay, and so are we going to, aside from the financing and other modules, are we also going to do engagement? Have we satisfied ourselves with the fact that the people in that area, which I know you wouldn't mention exactly, so have they been conscientized on the establishment of this nuclear plant?
Of course, in fact, they are one of the places where they regularly receive a lot of, education and public engagement with the vendor, with the owner operator, Nuclear Power Ghana. And even recently, we are just coming from there, engaging the community. And they are so much aware, happy that such a project is coming to their community. They even think we are delaying, time. It got to a point, it became like a competition between the preferred site and then the backup site. But for them now, none of them know which one is backup, which one is preferred. And I don't have any problem, broadcasting the name of the site, but for now, we are waiting for the site to be acquired. And then once government acquire the site, then we can say, whether it is point A or it's point B, we don't have any problem. There's no secrecy about whether it is point A or point B.
But
it's the fact that we want to acquire the site.
Can you tell us the region in which the site is based? And whether it's onshore or offshore?
Yes, we have one site in the western region and one site in the central region.
That's beautiful. Okay. Now, so besides this, let's also talk about the financing model, which is very important. And out of these 5, I know that you're going to come out with a final choice at the end of the year, like you said. But which ones are more forthcoming with good financing models? Which of the countries?
In fact, that advice may come from, the Ministry of Finance or the one who is looking at our books. Okay. Because to me, every financing mechanism has an advantage and a disadvantage. And so we have to look at the one which is best suited for our nation. Our main goal is to make sure that we have affordable power supply for industrialization and also for exports to our neighbors to reduce energy poverty and also to advance the cause of clean energy production in our energy transition agenda. So for the financing, I would say this is the main objective.
Okay. Now, recently we heard the Vice President state that, when if he's voted into power, he's going to ensure that he will add 2,000 megawatts of solar energy into the national grid. Now, I expected to hear nuclear, of course, because the President has stated it, that it's going to happen. And so does it mean that nuclear is playing second fiddle to solar in Ghana?
I don't think so. It is part of the energy mix. If you look at our energy transition, there is solar there is wind, there is nuclear, there is hydro. And in fact, our target is to get about 21 gigawatts of solar into the generation mix. So 2,000 is even just a drop in the ocean when we are looking at 21 gigawatts. So it doesn't make nuclear a second fiddle at all. It's just to make sure that investors who are looking at the solar market must know that we are ready. And when you build a nuclear power plant, it even gives room for you to even input more solar, because for a solar generation to be more viable, it needs a very good base load. Okay. And nuclear plays that good base load for solar to be able to bring its energy upon the grid, because that makes the grid more robust and susceptible and not susceptible to failure.
Okay, now Hugo, I'm coming to you. You have been involved in designing nuclear power plants, and so what would be your advice to Ghana? And first, before you answer that question, I want you to throw some light on what France is doing to win the bid for Ghana and, of course, other parts of Africa.
So I have no inside information on France. Unfortunately, I'm not part of any of those deals, but I do know that Emmanuel Macron has made a few trips to Ghana, and he's obviously trying to knock on the door, and so is Russia. So they're in competition. And as for the countries, the 5 countries listed, so I would assume, given the list, it's all pressure water reactors. They're not going for the heavy water reactors, which the Canadians are doing, which is fine. pressure water reactors. The technologies, by and large, are performant. I don't think there's anything inferior about French or Russian or South Korean technologies. They're all pressure water technologies, the same design type of things. So from that perspective, Ghana's actually spoiled for choice at the moment, because these vendor countries all want to demonstrate their willingness to compete on the world market. So you can say Russia is doing very well in the export market at the moment. They're building in Egypt. South Korea just finished one in the UAE. France has taken another step where they have revitalized their nuclear fleet. They're finishing a project now in the UK. They just finished one in Flamanville, and they're saying we're going to go for the EPR2, which is a new type of design, and they're going to target one in the Czech Republic, for example. Okay, so all of these countries are building on some level of scale. So Ghana will be in a very fortunate position from the perspective of a buyer. And one thing I'd like to highlight, in nuclear plants, the buyer actually has a little bit of leverage. Because if there's cost overruns, usually with the financing conditions, and this is probably what Ghana will negotiate for, it's either low interest loans or it is some form of vendor financing, where the vendor says we will absorb the cost overruns. And that's always been a key for negotiations. So I do think Ghana is in a very good position, and they've got a good choice to in terms of technology.
Now, okay, so what next? I mean, when you talk about designs, I know a lot of designs have come up. Recently, we have the floating nuclear power plant of Russia, and we have other designs. And so which ones, being a keen person who is monitoring nuclear designs, which one is more preferable?
Well, the Russian floating plant is also a pressure water reactor. So pressure water reactor, they're similar to coal plants in many ways. You've got a uranium fuel source with a moderator around it, and that generates the heat, and that is basically turning water into steam, and it's the steam turning the turbine. And they all work on similar principles. The newer designs that you're talking of, the small modular reactors, there's only really one of them, which is, and they're not in the 5 countries listed, which the Chinese, China is selling it. It's a pebble bed modular reactor, and I don't believe Ghana will go for that. If I can, jump ship a bit, it will be probably pressure water reactor.
What is the advantage?
So
what is the advantage of small? What is the advantage of large modular reactors over the small modular reactors?
Okay, so the large reactors is a known technology. It's been established for 50 to 70 years, and also it uses a lower level of enrichment for uranium. So it makes it a little bit easier with the non-proliferation treaties, for example, and the international laws. It's only 5% enrichment. So that's what is its advantage. And the fact that we have so many years of data on the technology, we know it's safe, and we know how to handle the accidents. All of these reactors are post-Fukushima compliant, so they know how to handle the hydrogen explosion, which was mainly the issue over there, and things of that nature.
Safety aspects of nuclear power plants. How safe? Because in this part of the world, people are still skeptical about the dangers associated with radioactive releases. And so, how safe are 4th generation nuclear reactors?
Well, there's only been 3 disasters in nuclear, which was 3 Mile Island, which was Fukushima and Chernobyl. And of those 3, only 2 out of 3 actually killed people from radiation. Nobody died from radiation in Fukushima, they died from the evacuation. Nobody died of radiation at 3 Mile Island. And at Chernobyl, yes, there were people dying, mainly the liquidators, because in those days, the Soviet Union mobilized a lot of young men to clean up the disaster, and that was a major error and mistake on their part. Okay, so that was the worst case of the accident. So you would say, we call it's the only technology where we call it a disaster that hasn't killed anybody. And the reasons, obviously, there was a fallout and things of that nature. So the 4th generation reactors have what we call passive safety systems. Generally speaking, the water is a moderator, okay? And when the accident occurs and the water drains, the chain reaction stops immediately. So if there's an accident, the reaction stops. Now, the big thing that happened at Fukushima was the hydrogen explosion, actually. And water, when under pressure, forms hydrogen. And there is now separate safeguard systems in many of these reactors to make that reaction less probable. And even if there's hydrogen leaking, there's ventilating systems and there's spraying systems to keep all of the reaction within the containment building. And the containment building being the concrete building with the dome, and it's got stress concrete in it to keep it, all of those things. In the unlikely case, and I stress it's unlikely because there's something like 400 reactors in the world, and only one has been an accident, okay? But in the unlikely case that will ever happen, the reactors are designed so everything stays within the concrete building and nothing else happens around it.
Right. Now, Dr. Aboagye, are we going for large nuclear reactor or small nuclear reactor? Definitely based definitely based on our financial situation. Which one are we taking? Small.
I think after this program, you should be awarded a nuclear engineering degree because Google was giving you a whole lecture on the inside of a nuclear power plant, and I don't know how you are imagining it now. Now with the with Ghana, we are considering both technologies anyway, and we know that there is only one SMR which is operational now. The Chinese one just I think has it started operating recently, but then the floating nuclear 2 is also has been operating for more than 1 year. I mean, or I think 2 years now. So this is. I mean, those are the only two technologies which I think are in operation. But then there are promising ones. So we are not saying that we are forgetting about this the SMRs. But then we are also largely looking at the large nuclear power plants. But the SMRs are part of our consideration in the medium to long term. They are part of our consideration.
Now, since we are looking at industrialization, and since we're also looking at power exports from, our country to other parts of of the sub-region through the West African power pool, you don't think that large modular reactors are preferable to the small ones? You don't think so?
No,
why should we combine?
I'm not saying that we are. Not considering large reactors. Large reactors are. Considered strongly, and all the countries that I listed are also having their design of small modular reactors. So you know how nuclear deals are and how nuclear corporations are. They may go with large and then add some small, or it can be large and small. But I'm saying that yes, we are considering large. Sorry. We are considering large, and we are also considering small as well.
Do you have the financial wherewithal to consider both at the same time?
Of course. That's why I'm saying that looking at the RFI, we are looking at the situation where the financial model is good enough for us to even if you are going large, we should be able to build 2 units of large nuclear power plants, which is more economical. And then if you are going small, you should be able to build multiple units of small modular reactors, all with the aim that we get the cheapest power from that technology and for industrialization and for exports.
Now, we don't have much time, but sticking your neck out, when do you think the project can take off, or is expected to take off after the selection has been done by the end of the year? When are we hoping?
I think for pouring of first concrete will be most likely the last quarter of 2027.
Okay, that's quite a long time from now. Even with all the requirements.
Even when you look at when you listen to a nuclear expert, he will tell you I'm being ambitious. He will tell you I'm even being ambitious.
Okay.
Yes.
So we don't have much time. Hugo. Recently, we saw Ghana sign some cooperation agreements with China, with other countries, and to some of us, the ordinary people, they concluded that Ghana has chosen China or Ghana has chosen France. Is that a way to go? Is it normal within the space, the nuclear space? Hugo?
Yes, and I want to point out something. South Africa's nuclear deal a few years ago with Russia, there was never a deal. We signed a joint cooperation agreement with Russia and China and France and all the other countries. And then the media ran with the story that Jacob Zuma, the then president, was a bit corrupt, made a deal with Vladimir Putin, which was complete nonsense. Okay. A joint cooperation agreement is just identifying what technologies is available before the RFI and the RFQ and those things start. It is not a binding contract. It doesn't mean Ghana has signed anything. Ghana signs a deal the moment they sign a deal. Okay. So they haven't done that yet, as far as I know. They'll announce it by the end of the year. So this is part of the normal process, and I do believe people need to just be a little bit informed about it, because we had bad journalism, to be honest, and that cost South Africa a nuclear plant, which we could have built in 2014, and because we didn't build it, we're rolling back.
We are learning. So we'll do the right thing.
Just people in Ghana, do not fall for that this time, please.
We are learning. Thank you very much. Now, your very final words, Hugo, 30 seconds before I move to talk.
Well, I think it's a great opportunity for Ghana. I would say, just as nuclear is not just about electricity, it's also about the science and technology. It keeps the brightest brains in the country, which I think is good. Ghana has a brain drain like South Africa and many developing countries, and that'll be a good thing. And Ghana needs electricity, so honestly, any form of electricity at this time should be welcomed, but nuclear should definitely be part of the mix. And I'm really happy to know that Ghana has people in its Ministry of Energy advising them that knows what they're talking about. So thank you for having me on the show, Finn.
Thank you very much, Hugo. Doc, your conclusion remarks in 30 seconds.
With respect to Ghana, if we don't go nuclear, we have no choice. If we stop it, in the next 20 years, we will come back to it, because we don't have coal like South Africa. Our gas reserve, also has, those reservoirs also have their limits. There's no large hydro plants because we've exhausted our large hydros. So, in fact, for nuclear, it's the only way which we are going to get a clean base load if we want to industrialize, follow our energy transition, and make sure that we're still significant in the West African economic zone. Thank you
very much. Dr. Robert Sobagye has said it all. If we don't go nuclear, of course, we don't hope to achieve our industrialization agenda. And of course, nuclear is everything power. Dr. Robert Sobagye is the Deputy Director in charge of Nuclear and Alternate Power at the Ministry of Energy. And also, Hugo Kruger is a nuclear power and renewable technology analyst. Of course, he's been working on several nuclear power technologies around the world. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for your time tonight on Energy 101. And next week, I'm bringing on board the implementers of the program themselves to tell us what exactly they have gone through within these 2 years. So we'll have the NPR, we'll have the NPIs, and we have all MPGs, all of them here to tell us where we are exactly. Thank you so much for making time on Energy 101. My name is Emmanuel Aboagye-Wiafe. Let's meet again same time next week for more interesting developments in the world of energy. Have a good evening.
Shutterstock Music. Asaase News on the Hour with me, Stephen Freeman. The director